All right. We are live. We are live. Good evening. I hope that your day was well. You know that this is Genesis in a Year Bible study. If it is your first time ever joining, watching the replay, welcome. This is the third week of our series on Noah specifically, but we are in Genesis chapter 8. And so the last 8 weeks we have been covering one chapter per week, diving into the Bible. What is it teaching us? What is our history? And really learning it from the biblical perspective, which is what I am all about here on my channels. And so I am live on TikTok and I am also live on YouTube. And if you're on TikTok, you should come and join me over on YouTube because you can see my screen. I'm going to go ahead and share it because per usual, we are going to read through it. As a recap, before we read, let me try to give a general recap so we can kind of put our mind in the right frame before we get into Bible study. So we're in Genesis 8, but before Genesis 8, which is like the end of the flood period, we have read all about Noah being a righteous man and being the only righteous man during this time. This is the antediluvian period, meaning before the flood. So during that period of time, literally Noah is the only righteous person living. And that tells us a lot of information about what was going on during that time. Remember, it told us in chapter 6 that the sons of God were on the earth. They married any woman that they wanted to, and like there was just pure evil, mostly just from like the sexual impurity that was existing. And so we have learned a lot about Noah's family. We studied his lineage in chapter 5, and we went through and understood like Enoch and Lamech and all the people from Seth all the way down, Noah's being the 10th generation from Adam all the way to Noah. We done looked at a timeline. We have studied creation. So we like understand how things are developing now as God has his people. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're reading chapter 8 from that lens so that we know that we understand like how God created things, what he intended. He intended for things to be good. He did not intend for people to just act any kind of way they wanted to say anything they wanted to be anybody they wanted to be. He created it to be a certain way, and because it was no longer that way, it was to the point where there was nothing that God could do. He could no longer continue to even strive for man. So he made the decision in chapter 6. I'm not even gonna let their lifespan be longer than 120 years old because I cannot put up with their level of evil, essentially. Like everything that we're doing, God would have to essentially create a way out of it for us. And so we're causing him to have to do more work because we're not living right. And I say we as in human. It was so bad that the animals weren't even pure. So it was just a lot happening. And this was in the second millennial. So, you know, when people tell y'all that the earth is millions of years old, do not believe it, because Genesis would not prove that whatsoever. It's merely thousands of years old. And I know that is a hard thing to accept because science tells us one thing. Well, science has to be proven, and there's nothing to actually prove this millions of years theory. So let's jump into chapter 8. And as a bonus for this week, in the study guide, that if you go to my profile and you sign up for my newsletter, in the study guide that I'm sending out tomorrow, I will include the link for the video that I told you all about last week, that where he's actually a lawyer, he's a law professor, but he studies science and he studies this evolutionary theory, he studies the Bible, and he actually like debates evolutionists. It's kind of like part-time at his university, and he breaks down the whole evolutionary theory so you can like better understand that Noah's flood was a global flood. And there's massive evidence for all of this. And I probably will also include a link just to a little snippet, because they also, we'll talk about a little bit, they know where the ark landed. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, just a snippet when we get into it. So I'm going to share my screen now. That way you can read along with me. But now that we have that context of like where we've been the last few weeks, hopefully it's a little easier to digest, so we can stay with it. So I'm reading NLT. You read whatever version suits you. And so let's start with chapter 8, verse 1. The flood recedes. So it says, but God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the flood waters began to recede. The underground waters stopped flowing, and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped. So the flood waters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. 2.5 months later, as the waters continued to go down, other mountain peaks became visible. Verse 6. After another 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven. The bird flew back and forth until the floodwaters on the earth had dried up. He also released a dove to see if the waters had receded and it could find dry ground. But the dove could find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it returned to the boat, and Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside. After waiting another 7 days, Noah released the dove again. This time, the dove returned to him in the evening with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Then Noah knew that the flood waters were almost gone. He waited another 7 days and then released the dove again. This time, it did not come back. Verse 13. Noah was now 601 years old. On the first day of the new year, 10.5 months after the flood began, the flood waters had almost dried up from the earth. Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry. Verse 15. Then God said to Noah, "Leave the boat, all of you, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Release all the animals, the birds, the livestock, and the small animals that scurry along the ground so they can be fruitful and multiply throughout the earth." So Noah, his wife, and his sons and their wives left the boat. And all of the large and small animals and birds came out of the boat, pair by pair. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and there he sacrificed as burnt offerings the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. And the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself, "I will never again curse the ground because of the human race, even though everything they think or imagine is bent toward evil from childhood. I will never again destroy all living things. As long as the earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night." So that is chapter 8. Remember, after you read something like that and you kind of reading through it, you just want to take your time reading through it. You want to see how you feel afterwards. And then you want to kind of go back and just chunk it. And that is exactly what we will do. If you all have comments, then please feel free to drop those in the comment. But we're just going to go up here and start with verse 1. God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the flood waters began to recede. Okay, so let's start at the top. But God remembered Noah. Some people read this and think God forgot about Noah, and now he remembers him. That's not how God's memory, if you will, actually works. That's not how memory, just because I remembered something doesn't mean that I forgot it. It means that it's like coming to the forefront. It's coming to my focus, and my attention is on it. So what it's really saying is that Noah is being brought to mind because now it's time to focus on Noah. Now, y'all know that this flood was global. God said, "I'm sending a flood to destroy every living thing." The flood went so high that it was 22 feet above the highest peak. This was a very high flood. In order for God is basically focused on the flood. He already protected Noah. He done already sent them animals and Noah's family into a boat. He's got them taken care of. His focus and his attention is on the destruction and making sure that what he's orchestrating with the springs welling up and the waters falling from the sky and all the torrents and things that's happening is taken care of. So it doesn't mean that God forgot Noah. And I would hate for somebody to think like, oh, well, maybe God forgot about me, or maybe he needs to remember me. When you're asking the Lord to remember you, you're saying, Lord, put me on the forefront of your mind. Like focus on me, and sort of put your attention towards my needs, is what you're really requesting. It has nothing to do with forgetting. So I wanted to make sure we forgot about, we didn't misunderstand that. So Noah was on the Lord's mind, is what it's saying. Him, along with all the wild animals and livestock on the boat with him. He sent, so this is his response. This is the Lord's response to recalling Noah and having him on the forefront of his mind. He then sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the flood waters began to recede. So they began to die back. Obviously, this is a full flood. It's going to take time for all these waters to recede. But just like we kind of see when if we have like a hurricane or flood or something, after time, the flood waters have a place to go back to. And it's telling us how it's able to recede. Obviously, it's no longer raining, because in verse 2, it tells us that the underground waters stopped flowing and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped. So at this time, you've got, okay, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. So we know that the whole thing was happening where the underground waters and the rains, the torrents from the sky was happening for 40 days. After the 40 days, he sends a wind to blow across the earth. So flood waters began to recede. So, and it says in verse 3, so the flood waters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. All right, so let's go over this again. We have flood happens, 40 days and 40 nights it rains. After it's done raining, the waters begin to recede, but it's gradual. It's very slow because it's so much water. It's a very slow process. Gradually receded. We're going to highlight that. After 150 days, so this is 5 months from the time the flood began. We know that the flood began. He told us in last week in chapter 7, it was in the second month on the 17th day of that month. So if we go 5 more months, we should do 2 months. It was the second month plus 5 months that passed. That's going to put us at 7 months. We should be at 7 months and 17 days. Exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. That's telling us that the waters have been receding for all of those days, for basically 90 days. It took 90 days for that water to go down like 22 feet, basically. Enough for where they could go, they could land actually at the tops of a mountain. So obviously this is a mountain range. Mount Ararat is in Turkey. Now, I know last week, I think I had made a comment at the end of chapter 7, and I was like, oh, well, I think that that was 150 days in addition to 40 days. But when we see how it says in verse 24, chapter 7, it says, and the flood waters covered the earth for 150 days. And I was like, oh, that's in addition to the 40 days and 40 nights. But no, it gives us more clarity, which is why we go back and we read the Bible. We got to check our own understanding of what it's saying, because that's not, when it explains it here, it breaks down in verse chapter 8, is breaking it down more on the timeline, then you understand it better. So we have mountains of Ararat. This is an important location geographically. This is in Turkey, present day Turkey. So Mediterranean, Middle East. Turkey is like above Iran. It's like on your way to going to like Europe. So in that country is the mountains of Ararat. There are actually several little videos on YouTube, and I'm gonna send it in the Bible study guide tomorrow, so you can check it out. But there are several videos. You can like literally type in YouTube, did they find the remains of the ark? And you will see where, and it matches the dimensions and everything. You will see where they found it. And they didn't find it intact. The ark was made of wood. We know that. But the impression of the weight of that ship made such an indentation on the earth that the impression is still there. It doesn't matter what grasses grow around it and all those things. The impression of the boat and where it landed is literally still there. It's almost like it's fossilized in a way, but it's not the wood. But you can still see the impression. So I challenge you to go and search these things. There's also, while I'm telling you about a resource, there's also a documentary. You can get it on YouTube, and you can also, I think it's on Tubi. You can see it. It's called "Is Genesis History?" It is a documentary. I love documentaries. You should too, because we need to know our history. It walks you through all of the evidence that they have found of the flood and creation and just how things were in the beginning. All the evidence that we have uncovered in present day, like archaeology, it just walks through it. It's pretty much a documentary to where when you look at it, you're not going to be able to turn away from understanding that Genesis is literal history. It is literal facts. And so I love Genesis because I really think that it is the foundation and the crux of our faith that we need to get in order to grow. We love God, and we tell him we love him. We pray to him, but I don't really think we believe and know really of all the things that he's done. And I know people be like, well, yeah, I read Genesis plenty of times, but have you really read Genesis? Do you really understand each and every miracle that had to take place? Do you understand how hard it would be for Noah to be the only righteous man amongst all the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that exist? I know it's thousands and thousands, y'all, because it don't take that long for the population to multiply. And I forget the year. I had to go check my notes, but Noah was born in like the year like 1100 or something like that. By the time the flood happened, it was like 1600 something, 56, I think, something like that. So we're talking about 1656 years of like the earth being here. People been having babies the whole, not the whole time, but pretty much, most of the time. So it don't take but so long. You know how hard it would be for Noah to be the only righteous man, and then for God to use that one man, his family, to save the rest of mankind and repopulate the earth. The animals went on the boat two by two, like in pairs, and that was enough to repopulate the population of animals. Like, we're not fully understanding the information that Genesis is giving us. So, enough of my rant. Mountains of Ararat is where the boat lands. And so these are details that's important, because when you read and when God has given us things like numbers and he's given us locations, these are things that we can go and find. This is evidence. He does not give details for no reason at all. Even the fact that the waters, it says the flood waters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. First of all, that's a long time. We talking about 5 months later. All you gotta do is divide 150 by 5. We're gonna get 30 days per month. We're talking a long time for the flood waters to just get to the mountain, to where it could rest on the mountains. So it was 22 feet above the highest mountain. So let's say that was about, we're going to give it 50 feet. Maybe the flood waters had receded 50 feet by then. I'm just going to do a little calculation on my computer real quick. 150 days divided by 50 feet. The flood waters was receding at 3 feet per day. That's how like slow of a process this is. Do y'all know how much water was on the earth? This is I like to do the math, because I like the information that it gives. It's giving us data, and we gotta read the data properly. Okay, so we've got the boat landed on Mount Ararat. They've got the location of it. You can go look up that video on YouTube later. 2.5 months later, after the boat has landed, as the waters continued to go down, other mountain peaks became visible. So this is the more important data. So what it's telling us is where the boat landed on the mountains of Ararat was a little bit higher than the other peaks that were all around it, because he couldn't see the other peaks. Okay, so remember, Noah's on this boat. Boom, the boat lands. Noah has a windows at the top of the boat, the very top. Remember, it's 3 levels on the boat. He told him how to build the interiors, and he told him to put windows all around it at the top. So that means Noah peeking out the windows. And it's telling us that at first he couldn't see any other peaks. But now, 2.5 months later, that's like, what is that? 30, 60, 75 days. After 75 days, he can see other mountain peaks out of his window. That's all Noah can see. Noah can only see at eye level. He can't see the ground around him. It's no ground around him. He can only see at eye level, right? I appreciate the hearts and likes. Sophia, thank you. So we have to kind of figure out, and we're going to be going through like, what is Noah doing during this whole period? He is literally seeing out, and he sees that there are no peaks that are visible. 2.5 months later, I just gave y'all an estimate of probably like how slow it was actually going down. And I think it could have been a little slower than that. 3 feet a day. So it takes time for these waters to recede. Now we see that Noah is seeing other mountain peaks. So Noah is getting confirmation that, okay, I think this flood is over. I think the rain is over. Obviously, they don't hear any more rain. They're not moving. They settled on the mountain. So it's like they're moving, they're progressing, but it's very slow. This is a very slow process. After another 40 days, all right, so this is when our math comes in. We have 150 days of the flood, right? The boat came to rest. 2.5 months later, that's like about 75 days later, then you can see other mountain peaks. Then another 40 days. So at this point, let's do some math. We've got 150, 150, and I don't know if y'all can see my screen, YouTube, but I'm just adding on my little calculator because my phone is on TikTok. 150 plus 75 plus 40 days. 265 days have passed at this point. Okay, so at 265 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven. This is telling us that Noah has some sort of indication that the flood waters are definitely going down. So at some point, this is going to be good for us to be able to get out this boat. But Noah needs data. Noah needs to figure out what is it. Again, he can only see at eye level. He can't see the ground below him because he's on top of a big old boat. You cannot see the water below you. He can see that the mountains, okay, looks like I can't see the water. So we need to figure out where this water is. So he releases a raven. The bird flew back and forth until the flood waters on the earth had dried up. Now, when some people read this, they say that the raven didn't come back. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, and maybe y'all can help me. I don't see that. It says that the bird flew back and forth. He went out, he came back. He went out, back and forth. That's what I interpret as back and forth. So maybe I'm misinterpreting something, but sometimes when people are talking about the raven versus the dove, they really try to pit this raven as if it's like this evil creature of death and it ran away. Couldn't have been that, because the Bible says that the bird flew back and forth until the flood waters on the earth had dried up. Now, what people don't understand about ravens is the type of bird that they are. Remember, I told you Noah needs to gather information. So Noah cannot go out the boat. Why? Because the Lord didn't tell him to go out that boat. The Lord told him to go into the boat, but he never told him to go out the boat yet. So Noah is sending a bird who can scout the situation. Let's see where we are. You can see further than I can see because you're a bird. Now, ravens are known to be good flyers, similar to maybe like the level of a hawk. Like they can go long distances. And so they're good for that. When I looked up, like I wanted to look up the raven. And it says that ravens can even learn to mimic humans, like voices. I never knew that about ravens. That's what the zoo said. When I'm looking, I looked this up on let me tell y'all what zoo I was looking it up. The Smithsonian National Zoo and Conservation page was telling how ravens can pick up, not as much as probably like parrots and stuff, like I don't think full sentences, but they can pick up words. They can learn from humans. If they are raised with humans, it can learn. So I'm putting all this information together and I'm like, this is a good flight bird. It will have good range. It can use objects to its benefit. So if it was a tree or a mountain or anything that it needed to be able to like find something, its beak is very strong and it can pick up on communication. So maybe the bird brought back some information to Noah to kind of give him an update because this bird sounds like it's going out pretty frequently from the boats. So I'm like, instead of us hating on the raven and talking about how it's the bird of death and the raven is unclean and it don't ran, it is an unclean animal. It never said Noah ate it. It's only unclean for eating and for sacrificing. It doesn't mean you can't, it has no use. It still has use for humans. So this bird was probably providing some critical data to Noah so him and his family who are cooped up in the ark can probably have some hope and relief of like, all right, it's going. Now I can't tell you for sure that the bird was talking to Noah, but what I'm telling you is that the zoo said, I'm just playing, not the zoo said, that there is a lot of communication that birds are able to do. And we know that birds sing and they chirp, and all of that is communication. And so for all we know, Noah knew and understood some of that stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not a bird trainer, but I'm sure that the people who are bird trainers, they know they birds, they know what the birds is trying to say. So I don't know what the raven was telling Noah, but I know that that is not a random piece of information where he just sent, because it's kind of like you read and you're like, oh, well, he sent out a raven. Like, this is kind of random. And the raven didn't do anything. You need to know a little bit about a raven before you just assume that the raven didn't do anything. Okay, another digression. I'm sorry. Let's go into verse 8. He also released a dove to see if the water had receded and it could find dry ground. Now, this is where people always are like, well, see, the dove was useful because the dove was going out to find the dry ground. Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Ravens and doves are not the same type of bird. Doves need dry ground. They literally build nests. They literally use the lower trees and shrubs. So him sending out a dove was to see how low the water, if it could find dry ground. Noah knew that if that bird could find dry ground, we are cooking with Crisco, essentially. So it's two different, we talking about one bird that's very good at flight, one bird that's got good range, one bird that can communicate. Now we're talking about a different type of bird that's meant for that ground level. So sometimes people are literally kind of just making assumptions about the text, and I wouldn't go as too far to say like, oh well, it's good versus evil with it's some birds. Things, a lot of things are symbolic. I'm sure there's a reason for a raven and a reason for a dove, and a lot of it is symbolic, but some people just take it to a whole nother level, and I'm like, that makes sense with the text. He told us the reason why the dove was to find dry ground. In verse 9, it says, but the dove could find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it returned to the boat, and Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside. So I guess people assume that because it didn't say that Noah did the same thing about the raven, that the raven didn't come back, but that it says flew back and forth. That raven is used consistently. This dove is used as a one-time thing. Okay. So Noah let the bird back in. After waiting another 7 days, so it keeps giving us time, right? We need to pay attention to time. If you're trying to figure out how long did this take and what's going on, look at this. 40 days. He let that raven out. Then before that, it was 2.5 months. These are all time-keeping measures that the Bible is giving us. And instead of us reading time and interpreting it properly, we just kind of like, well, we don't know when it happened. And then we let people convince us of things like, well, you don't know when that happened, so you really can't say that this was this particular year. No. We know what year Noah was born. And it tells us that he was 600 years old in the second month, in the 17th year, on the 17th day of that month, the flood water started. And so we can track time because it tells us in the Bible. You just have to read the text properly, take notes, do your math, because God is never going to lead us astray. After waiting another 7 days, Noah released the dove again. All right. This time, the dove returned to him in the evening with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Then Noah knew that the flood waters were almost gone. Okay, so we are at the level of the canopy. Now, olive leaf is important because olives are trees are not that tall. We're not talking about like a Amazonian rainforest canopy like at the very very top. We're talking about like a tree you can it's not going to be too much taller than the average like human adult. So this is an important type of tree, so we know how low it's going. Noah is obviously a adult. He would understand all these things when it comes to like agriculture, so he would know like, oh well, we're really close because he just pulled an olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the flood waters were almost gone. It just tells us how Noah interpreted it. I don't know why we don't just take what the word says sometimes. It literally tells us how Noah interpreted that. I'm sure he sees it as a sign of peace. I'm sure he does because it's an olive leaf, and I know the olive leaf is, a symbol of peace, and I'm sure he does see that. But he also knows it's gonna be peace because he got peace when he went on that ark and he was saved. So I'm sure he knows that his peace is coming. I'm sure that was a symbol and message being sent as well. Then in verse 12 it tells us that he waited another 7 days. See, time again, another 7 days, and then released the dove again. This time it did not come back. That means that it took another 7 days from the point when he bought him this leaf, where he was able to get a hold of an actual tree at a low level. It only took 7 more days for the flood to recede. So if we use that same calculation like we did earlier, we said, okay, it's probably about 3 feet a day. If we use that same calculation, that's about 21 feet. This is going to continue to recede. It could have sped up because it was less water, or I don't really know, how that kind of works when it's a flood. But I'm just kind of giving you some ballpark numbers on how to think about this thing when it says the time passed. And then people might question, well, how come it dried so fast? Well, the water is receding. We know that earlier it was receding at the rate of about 3 feet per day because we did our math. And so that was about 21 feet. I could look it up real quick and tell you how tall is let's see how tall is an average olive tree. And we got to take obviously 20 to 30 feet. Would you look at that? Boom. See how low the trees are not that tall. 20 to 30 feet. That's perfect for our example right here. Because it just told us that 7 days, and 7 days is going to recede about 20. I love how God does math, y'all, because it be adding up. And y'all have to try it when you're reading something like Genesis. Is the perfect time to try out your math skills and make sure you can do some basic stuff. All right, so it was about 21 feet within those days. The dove did not come back. We good. So Noah is anticipating all of this. Now, remember, this is about, it doesn't give us all the time that passed by, but we were at about 265 days. It gave us at least 14 more days. So we know we are probably close to about 300 days by now, but it just doesn't give you all of that breakdown of the time of what's going on the whole time he's waiting on that ark. However, we've got some good time when we do our timeline in the Bible study guide tomorrow, that I send out, you'll be able to fill in your timeline pretty well because it gives us the different breakdown of what's going on. Now, if you want that timeline, make sure you double click the link in my profile and you sign up for my newsletter because that's how you get it. Now, it says Noah, this is good math, y'all. Noah was 601 years old on the first day of the new year, 10 and a half months after the flood began. The flood waters had almost dried up from the earth. Noah was 601 years old. This is 10 and a half months after the flood began. That means at this point, 10 and a half months, about 30 days per month, right? Depending on the year, but just about 30 days per month. We know that 30 days times 10 months is 300, but I'm going to put it in the calculator just so we can all see it. And it said a half, so we're going to add about 15 days to that. So we had about 315 days. All right. That means we have another month and a half to go for it to be a full year. So now it says at this point, Noah was 601 years old. On the first day of the new year, 10 and a half months after the flood began, the flood waters had almost dried up from the earth. We are almost there. It was good enough for the dove not to have to return, but remember, birds live in trees. So obviously the trees were in a good enough shape to where he could he or she could, bury in the tree, make his nest with the leaves and with the twigs and all the things. But it doesn't mean that the floodwaters were completely gone and that it was ready for them to be able to get off the boat and be able to maneuver around. So we still got some time happening here. The floodwaters had almost dried up from the earth. Okay, then it says Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. So at this point, when I saw covering, at first I thought it was the window. I said, no, that's a different word. That says covering. Y'all, this man took the roof off the ark. He lifted the roof off the ark. And he already had all his indications of we're getting somewhere, we're moving somewhere. I'm sure he also needed fresh air. But at this point, he was ready. They took the covering. He didn't get out the boat though. And I thought that was this is interesting to me because it says Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry. And I was like, y'all, he sat there and he could see that the earth was drying. He could probably see a lot of vegetation happening. He probably had a lot of temptation to try to draw him out of the boat. But Noah didn't get out the boat. Noah and his family and all the animals that was with them stayed in that boat. Everything stayed in the boat. I'm going to show you how we know everything stayed in the boat because the Bible is going to tell us. Now, I don't know if I would have been able to do that for two more months. I mean, if you got somebody with you, they're going to be like, what you think? Can we just walk around? Let's just see how it is. We kind of take it upon ourselves to just kind of go and explore and they stayed in the boat. You know why they stayed in the boat? Because Noah was a righteous man. You know why Noah was a righteous man? Because Noah was obedient. Before he even built the boat, Noah followed, it says, exactly what the Lord told him to do. It tells us that 2 times. Noah did, once the boat was built and the Lord told him to get the animals and put them on the boat and do this and do that, Noah did exactly what the Lord told him to do. So why would Noah move off the boat if the Lord didn't tell him to do it? But see, in our flesh, we could deduce, well, the earth seems to be drying enough and the birds seem to be fine that I sent out, didn't come back. I need to go look for the bird. We will either deduce that something is okay to do or come up with a reason as to justify a decision as to why we would go do something. Noah didn't do that. Noah got off that boat. Noah stayed on that boat. And that's amazing to me. See, it's the little things like that you have to read the Bible well. And you need to be able to see this. Okay, here's some more time. 2 more months went by. So we are at a full year at this point. And at last the earth was dry. It only rained for 40 days and 40 nights. It took the rest of that year to dry it up. That's a word. Then God said to Noah in verse 15, leave the boat, all of you and your wife, and your sons and their wives. Release all the animals, the birds, the livestock, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, so they can be fruitful and multiply throughout the earth. Then God said, leave the boat. So that's what Noah did. They left the boat. Him and his wife, all the animals were released. And this is the reason why. And we have to always look for why. So when it says because or so and in an effort to however it says, you have to look for the why. So they can be fruitful and multiply throughout the earth. So these people and animals can be productive, fruitful, and multiply in population throughout the earth. That's 2 main purposes that we have: fruitful and multiply, fruitful and multiply, fruitful and multiply. So in our lives, we should be trying to figure out, am I being fruitful and multiplying in whatever thing that we're doing? So Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives left the boats, and all of the large and small animals and birds came out of the boat. This is the interesting part right here, y'all. Pair by pair. Now, you tell me, in what world do animals just move at that speed? Like pair by pair. The way they went onto the boat was pair by pair. They had some sense. They moved at an orderly pace, an orderly fashion. It was not chaos. And people have imagined that there is no way that Derek could have been on that boat for a whole year. And there was no, I guess people say like there was no issues, like there's no way because they're animals. Look at how the animals came off the boat. Pair by pair. I believe that the animals had enough sense to know what was going on outside that boat that they didn't need to cut a monkey, act a fool. They had been told to go to the boat. They following the instructions that their creator has given them. So it's no way that they wouldn't have been able to come off just pair by pair. So the animals did not stampede out the boat. It came out pair by pair, peacefully. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and there he sacrificed as burnt offerings the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. Now, remember, back in chapter 7, it told us that there were certain animals that were considered clean that the Lord approved. And he said that you would take 7 pairs of those animals and 1 pair of all the other animals. So which animals did they sacrifice? The animals that they didn't eat, obviously, but also these are animals that were approved. There was some sort of understanding that Noah had of what a clean animal was and what an unclean animal was. Now, we don't know when that happened because the Bible never tells us that this generation was notified of that. We know that in the beginning, I told y'all this last week in Genesis 1, they were given the fruits of the trees and the plants of the field to eat. At some point, animals were added to that, but for clean animals. So now they still have some of the animals because God said for eating and for sacrifice. So they still have animals that are for sacrifices. And those are the animals and birds that were sacrificed. So it says, and the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself. So this is his response. When God is pleased with us, there is a response from him. This is his response. I will never again curse the ground because of the human race. That's telling us that he had already cursed the ground because of the human race. Even though, because it says never again, that means he had done it before, right? We know that he cursed the ground because back when Adam was alive, that was part of the curse, to curse the ground. I will never again curse the ground because of the human race, even though everything they think or imagine is bent toward evil from childhood. I know we say our children are innocent, and in a sense they are, but we know that they can be mean and ugly just as much as adults. I will never again destroy all living things. So he's never again going to curse the ground. Never again going to destroy all living things. 2 promises there. And this is what he's promising to him. This is what he's saying to himself. As long as the earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. Now I thought about these 2 things because it's an either or. You're either cold or you're hot. It's either summer or it's winter. It's either day or it's night. It's really no in between. And I thought about this. Y'all see how it says summer and winter? Where did we get 4 seasons from? Where did we uncover that there were 4 seasons on the earth? I know we say spring, summer, fall, winter. It's funny because the things that they teach us in school, as far as like measurements of time, it's 12 months, it's 365 days, it's 4 seasons. I question a lot of those things now because, like for instance, here it says summer and winter. Where's the spring and where's the fall? Fall is the precursor to winter, so it's just all a part of the same sentence, season. Spring is the precursor to summer. It's all a part of just like that planting season. I I don't see the other seasons, and we know that spring and fall are the shorter seasons anyway. Like, yeah, so that's just my little side thought, just in case y'all was wondering what I be thinking sometimes. Um, so yeah, summer and winter. I don't know where we got 4 seasons from. Just like I don't know where we got 12 months from when it's 13 new moons. But I didn't make up those rules. Um, so yeah, what are our thoughts? What are our questions? Where do we sit with this? We see this is how the flood ended. This is literally the whole chapter is just about Noah gaining information about where the signs were, where the boat was, and what's going on, and how long it took for them to get off that boat. Remember, it rained for 4 days and 40 nights, but we got a whole year to go by here, and it took the rest of that year for the flood waters to fully recede and the land to actually be dry and usable. And so that is the crux of this message. So I'm looking for any questions or comments. I am going to stop sharing and just glance at my notes just to see if it's anything that I did miss. Oh, I did want to point out the first thing that Noah did, he didn't go try to find some food. He didn't go trying to run around and find a place to build a house. It said, then, so, and it says, so Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives left the boat. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord. The first thing he did was give thanks. Building an altar is giving thanks, showing appreciation. You giving honor where honor is due. It's like in a very physical way. He understood that they were kept by the Lord. So Noah made sure that he thanked the Lord for that. So I did want to point that part out. Um, just looking and see if I'm missing anything else. I think I'm good, y'all. I think I remembered everything this week pretty much. So if there are questions you have, please feel free to let me know. Again, if you want the Bible study guide, which is basically your way of being able to study it, I'm updating it every Friday when I send the newsletter out. So you can literally add the new page or print it off or do whatever you want to do, or just review it for yourself to take notes, additional notes, because I'm having you to sort of like read and pull information for yourself. So you should be able to go back through like tomorrow, and you should literally be able to put that timeline together, and it should make perfect sense to you. So those are the types of things that I'm hoping. Give me feedback on the Bible study guide if it's something you like, if it's something that I should do differently, a question I should ask, a resource, whatever you need, let me know. And I look forward to seeing y'all next week when we talk about Genesis 9, when he gets the covenant. This is when the covenant comes in with the rainbow and God's promise to his people and all those things. So I'm looking forward to it. And I look forward to seeing y'all next week.